Nomadic life has been a thread of earth for centuries. It resides in the echoes of our past. For some cultures, nomadism is a tie to their ancestral roots as nomadic pastoralists. They were superb horsemen and herdsmen that traveled with their flocks. Still to this day, these cultures can be found in many pockets of the world, from the Mongols of Central Asia to the Maasai people of East Africa and the nomadic Bedouin tribes of Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and other countries. Their motivation has always traditionally been in search of food and water. My motivation was discovering me. This is my story. Hello, how are you? I'm Antoinette Naomi, and this is Reshaping Culture. I just wanted to hop on and just give some story time and tell you what it's been like living as an expat for the past 11 years. I left the United States in 2013, and I just set out on a mission just to embark on exploration. And then it took me on a journey that was well experienced. So for the longest time, I took French in high school. I started out with French as an elective, and I fell in love with the language. And then I progressed, and I was the one that won the award in my class in high school as the best student for French. My high school teacher actually lived in France, and I thought that was just the most amazing experience. So it was always something that I just said, okay, I want to do, but it was just something that I wanted to do. And then in 2012, my grandmother passed away, and she was one of my anchors to, I guess you would say, family. And so once that passed, I just felt like there was just nothing holding me to just be anchored in one place. But it still was something that was in the back of my mind. And then family members started to bring it up. They said, I thought you said you were going to move to France. I thought you said you were going to move to France. I thought you. And so it was almost as if like an omen. It was like, okay, maybe it's time to move to France. And so that was my first exploration. So I moved to Lyon. I lived in Lyon for a while. And then after I left Lyon, I traveled to Switzerland, and then I was tired of Europe, but I just didn't want to go back to the States. And so I said I really wanted to go to Bali. For some reason, I had fallen in love with Eat, Pray, Love, the movie, as well as the book. And I was like, I want to have that. I want to fall in love. I want to travel. I want to meditate, all of that stuff. And so I actually said, I want to go to Bali. But I had a friend that was in my ear, whispering in my ear, saying that Bali is dangerous. You can't go to Bali. And so I believed her. And instead of listening to my intuition, I decided to go to New Zealand. I flew from Switzerland to New Zealand for my birthday. I decided, okay, I'll go to New Zealand for my birthday, the South Island. And I will tell you, I was there for 5 days, and I went to Christchurch first, and then I went to Dunedin. I'm here in my hotel room in Christchurch, New Zealand. Tomorrow I'm going to go and check out do the gondola ride, and then I'm going to head down to Dunedin. In Christchurch, they experienced an earthquake, and so they were still repairing themselves at that time. This is the devastation that they endured here in Christchurch. It was massive. It was massive. Massive. The morale here These people are really kind people, It's just really sad to see what they endured. And then I decided I wanted to go to Dunedin. And so I was there and it was so cold. I was like, what the fudge? It's just so cold. And so I was talking to a driver for the hotel that I was staying in, and he was like, maybe you should go to Fiji. And I was like, okay, I'll go to Fiji. So I went from New Zealand to Fiji.
I have.
It's really cold.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was warm. Are there any sharks over here? I'm scared. No sharks.
Go. Oh, that's a very good.
God.
You get a 10 out of 10 in
And
there.
then from Fiji to Australia. So this is Queen Street Shopping Center in Brisbane. This kind of reminds me of a shopping center in Melbourne, or I think it was Sydney. Kind of reminds me of a shopping center in either Melbourne or Sydney, I'm not sure. This is it here. And then finally, after going to all of those places, and they really weren't the places that my heart was really calling me to. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to this person. I'm going to go to where I'm wanting to go. So I decided to go to Bali. So I went from Fiji to Brisbane, and then from Brisbane to Bali, and fell in love. I fell in love with Bali. I loved Bali. Hey, little guy, you can't eat all those by yourself. Look. Look. What are you doing? Totally distracted. Not happy with it. The humans there are just so amazing. They're so warm. And of course, wherever you are, wherever we go in the world, we can meet the good and the bad. But in Bali, that island, they're just so innocent. I just found their spirits to be innocent. And from Bali, I spent a total of 5 months in Bali. So I lived in Bali for about 5 months, on and off, because I went back and forth from Singapore to Bali. So I spent about 3 months in Singapore. So this is their subway station. I mean, like, it's so clean. This is Singapore. Down in the subway MRT station. 5 months in Bali, and then I spent a total of 2 months in Thailand, 2 separate times. I spent time in Bangkok and Chiang Mai, and I also spent time in Onang Krabi and Koh Samui, Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Koh Samui, and Onang Krabi. It's best to eat before 9, but no, it's not a. So then you use is that like compost?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And this one,
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah.
Compost.
Yeah.
Enough?
I think so, yeah. I think that's plenty. So Chiang Mai is definitely a place that you want to visit in Thailand. I'm at the Tiger Kingdom, and even though they are not like the way they are living with the monks outside of Bangkok, this is, I believe they take very good care of the tigers, and they promise that they are not drugged. So that's a really good thing that they're not drugged. I'm so happy about this day. I'm grateful. It's Christmas, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful time here in Chiang Mai. It's only been day 2 for me, and I'm excited about the remaining 20 or 19 days that I have left. So, all right, I am waiting for my driver, and I am going to just saunter around the rest of the Tiger Kingdom and take a look at the other tigers that are here. Really loved Singapore. Singapore, I would say, is probably the cleanest, really a very clean country. And for the most part, there are pockets of Chinatown that weren't so clean, but. So, when you are in Singapore, what you want to do is make sure you come down to Marina Bay and check out this magical site, and also experience right up there, which is the observatory overlooking the city. It's sensational. For the most part, it was a very, very clean country, and I really enjoyed them. The individuals there, those that lived there, were really kind as well. And I also spent a month in Malaysia, and I enjoyed. So I was going to explore more of Asia, but then I started to get a little bit of this feeling of just not wanting to do it anymore. I just had this feeling of it was just time to leave. I just had that feeling inside it was time to leave, but it just wasn't time to go back to the States. There had been a lot of police brutality. There had just been a lot of violence that had taken place in the US, and so I hadn't desired to go back. So I went back to France, and then I went to Paris, and I had traveled all around France. I lived in Lyon, of course. That was like my touchstone. And then I traveled to Paris and Arles and Annecy and Aix-en-Provence and Nice and just different areas. And I went skiing in France. So different areas in France. And I was in Paris, and Paris is it's about the hustle and the bustle. It's just about the hustle and the bustle. And I just didn't feel it. And so I was there for about 2 weeks. And then I left Paris and went to Belgium, because shortly after I had graduated from uni, my undergraduate portion of uni, I had flown, and I took like a 6 week, I backpacked across Europe for 6 weeks. First I landed in London. Of course, I went to the UK, and then I went to Europe. So I landed in London at Heathrow Airport. And then from Heathrow, I went to Belgium, to Bruges, and then from Bruges to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam to Paris, and then from Paris to Italy. And I spent time in Florence and Rome and Civitavecchia and Capalbio, like the Tuscany region. And then I went to Barcelona and spent time in Barcelona and Sevilla, Spain. And I fell in love with Sevilla, Spain. And I thought, wow, if I ever want to become an expat, this is where I'd live. But I never thought that I would be where I am at now. So actually I did. When I noticed Bruges, for some reason, Bruges was a place that I thought, wow, I could see myself living here one day. Like there was something in the air. There was something in the air that just said, wow, I could see myself living here one day. And so I spent 6 weeks backpacking across Europe. That was after my first part of my uni, my undergraduate portion. And it was only after I flew back to France from my time in Asia that I said, where do I want to go? Because I was over France. And so I went from Paris to Brussels, and I met a guy the very first day that I arrived in Brussels. I met a guy. I fell really hard for that guy, and we had our love story, and it was a very, I would have to say, it was the deciding factor that made me choose Belgium. He was the reason why I chose Belgium initially. So, but what's it been like? I would say there are some things that I've learned traveling. One of the things that I've learned is as long as you have like an anchor to like how you're going to earn money, like the manner in which you can earn money, it's like getting past the mentality of paying bills in one place. Like one person might say, well, I can't do that. I have this, and this. But if you're paying $3,000 a month for rent or for a mortgage, that's more than I found. Like in Bali, you could live easily. Well, back in when I traveled to in Bali, I'm unsure of what the rupiah is right now or what's the conversion rate now. But when I was there, it was easy to really live in a really great manner for a lower amount. It's more expensive in Europe, but if you have like an anchor of like, okay, a budget of how much you want to spend per month, and you don't have to have a fixed residence. You can just have like locations all around the world. You can rent Airbnbs, or you can go on Orbitz or Expedia or those platforms and find really great deals for like those locations. Like for instance, if you're traveling through like Bali or either Thailand and you're booking a place, you can book someplace like for instance on hotels.com, and I think every 10th or 11th night is free. So there are ways that you can get around it. I've also learned, and before, this was pre-COVID, so how it is now, I'm unsure. But when I was traveling like nonstop pre-COVID, I recall that just booking a flight last minute was more advantageous than booking a flight in advance, because you get to be spontaneous, and there's no need to be forced to cancel a flight or have to pay penalties for saying, oh, I don't want to go here now when something else comes up. It's an opportunity to be spontaneous. And I also found that, I traveled alone, and I would say I met quite a bit of individuals, but more so it wasn't necessarily the type of individuals that I hung out with. It was kind of like I met them along the way. Like for instance, when I was in Fiji, there was a guy who was the resort owner, and he took a liking to me, and so he wanted to date me, but I wasn't really interested in him. He wasn't really my type. He was too old, I felt like, for me. I found like in those regions, for instance, in Fiji and Thailand, a lot of older men like to date women that are quite younger than them. Like I'm talking decades younger than them. And so that's something that I'm in no way into. I've been fathered before. I have no desire to have a father as a boyfriend. And no offense to anybody that does. However, I found myself meeting men more than I met women. Like for instance, a guy in Bali, I met him, and he was totally love bombing me, and the guy in Fiji as well. And so I met guys. So like guys, I found myself meeting guys more so. But when I lived in France, like I speak 3 languages. My first language is English. My second is French. My third is Dutch. And I'm going to do a video on my experience as an expat speaking Dutch and speaking French, and what's that been like for me. So with my French, when I lived in France, I went to Alliance Française. So I took Alliance Française. So I was, like I said, I spent time. So I'll do a video on that. So when I lived in France, I met individuals because I was doing like conversations, like meeting up and doing conversations with them. Like I would like meet, and I was able to meet girls, like, girlfriends, like girls that I could hang out with there. But so those experiences were due to like a conversations exchange. Like we would sit down and they'd speak in French and I'd speak in English, and we teach each other our native language that way. So the things that I've learned being abroad for all of this time, I've learned that I'm a global citizen. I've learned that the things that we do stateside or the things that we do in our own country, especially in the United States, impacts the globe. I've learned that we're all human, that there are so many individuals that like to faction each other off, and that we're human. We have the same capacity to love, the same capacity to feel pain, the same capacity to feel fear, and all of those things. We're human. We have the same drive for a good life. I've learned that it's important to value myself. I've learned that Earth is my home as opposed to any country or nation. I've just learned to be more mindful of others, like mindful of their journey, mindful of other cultures, like more respectful. Like for instance, in Bali, the individuals, they're very loving. There's a strong Muslim population and a strong Hindu population. And so on the Balinese, on Bali, they're Hindu. They practice Hinduism. And so I've learned just the manner in which I can just witness the ability to allow humans to be themselves, to allow others to be themselves without my putting my spin on who I think they are. I've also learned to be respectful of other cultures, to be mindful of other cultures. Like for instance, as an American or as an English speaker, the first thing that I practice doing is I practice, like in France, the goal was to improve my French, and I've learned that to lead with their language first, to lead with their customs. So being an expat, over a decade being an expat, I would say I've learned that it's okay to anchor. It's okay to just be on planet and just to be a settler. You know, being an expat is like being a settler, like those that chose to go to the US and to settle in the US. They did it because they wanted to have a different experience, a different life. And that's what I've learned. So if you have any questions about my experience as an expat and what that means to reshaping culture, what being an expat means to reshaping culture is it means that I have the opportunity to invest in learning other cultures, invest in the ability to witness life forms, just to witness different customs, to witness different ways of behaving and behavior, to witness different customs and customary ways of being, and to experience it with beauty and grace. So that's what I've learned. And I've also learned to care more about myself in the process. And that means, what do I really want? How do I want to spend my life? How do I want to dig roots? And to really care about roots, care about how to explore life and to create experiences without missing out on my own journey. I've learned to practice valuing my own journey without comparing myself to others. So wherever you are in the world, I wish you so much joy, so much peace, and so much happiness. And until the next time, I'll speak with you very soon. Be good to yourself and be good to one another. Peace to you.